May I have your kind attention, please? We are about to begin this international webinar. Before we start, I would like to inform to please set your camera on and keep muted your audio during the webinar begin. Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.
Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Greetings to all of us. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Afternoon, everyone. It gives us immense pleasure to welcome you in this international webinar. Let me introduce myself. My name is Nabila Haja. And it is wonderful and precious chance for me to be your moderator in this international webinar, Saturday, 2nd of October 2021. And it is also our privilege to have you all with us today. So first of all, I would like to welcome all the honorable speakers in this international webinar. First of all, the Honorable Associate Prof. Teguh Reza as our founder and CEO of the Asian Lecture Committee, and then the Honorable Mr. Samudro Seto, PS MBA, Lecturer Faculty Economy and Business from Esa Unggul University Jakarta, Indonesia, and the Honorable our second speaker, Mrs. Nur Fadiha Mokhtar, PhD, Lecturer of University Malaysia Trengganu. And then Honorable Mrs. Dewi Nurbaiti Askom FM as a lecturer from STEMI Institute Jakarta, Indonesia. And then also all the honorable lecturers and all the participants. Thank you for being with us today. Very nice to meet you all. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, let us start this event by praying first. So this event that we will hold today will run smoothly without any obstacle at all. So, according to individual beliefs, may begin. Okay. Thank you very much. On behalf of the committee, we would like to welcome all of you into this international lecture series study base of academic and best practice in our theme today, small medium enterprise innovation cultural products development in millennial customer styles, held by Asian Lecture Committee, Mandala International. So Paul, I would like to allow me to introduce you to the agenda today. We will start by opening the opening session, and then there will be an opening remark delivered by our founder and CEO, the Asian Lecture Committee, Associate Prof. Teguh Reza. And then the agenda will be continued with a session one discussion, and continued with the second two, and lastly continued with this the third session. And also all the question and answer session will be followed at the very end of our last session. After that, right now I will be pleased to give the floor to Associate Prof. Teguh Reza as our founder and CEO of the Asian Lecture Committee to give us or deliver us the welcoming speech before we begin.
Okay, thank you Nabila. Selamat tengah hari di Jakarta dan juga selamat petang di Malaysia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dari Studio Angkasa Puri macamnya ini, saya mengucapkan selamat datang kepada Dr. Evi, Bapak Samudro, Ibu Dewi. The first welcoming speak point adalah this is I will to inform you that this is the second event today. Before that is sebelah pagi tadi. Okay, therefore I am to say thank you very much for you all of the famous speaker in this event. I know you are is very busy. Many program just now after COVID come to our country. Many Zoom every day, but I know by now I too you will to join in this time. Therefore, once more, thank you very much for the all speakers and to the all of participants from Jakarta, Indonesia, Bogor, Bekasi, from Malaysia, from South Thailand, and from Singapore. Kadang-kadang pun ada dari Rusia, dari China pun ikut, karena ini memang kita informasikan dalam website www.aseanlecturer.com. You can to see this website. The second, ini je ASEAN Lecturer Community dimaksudkan adalah, saya bercara bahasa Malay sikit, untuk supaya kita boleh berkongsi knowledge, kita sebut dengan silaturahim keilmuan antara lecturer dalam kawasan Asia Tenggara ini. Karena itu kita harapkan bahawa Southeast Asia must be better than the another Asia side, ya. Ya, kita kena lebih baik daripada Asia Selatan. Kawan kita di sana ada India, Pakistan, Asia Barat ada Iran, ada Yordan dan sebagainya. Asia Timur ada Korea, ada Jepun. Nah, kita Asia bagian Tenggara, kita kena lebih baik daripada Asia bagian lain. Tentu saja dengan collaboration of ASEAN countries campuses. Right. Therefore, kita di dalam serumpun, karenanya nanti boleh diguna English, boleh diguna Malay language and Indonesia too. But don't you use Javanese and Sundanese. Ayam pun tak faham. Ya, nanti soalnya kita di sini biasa kadang-kadang campur sedikit dengan bahasa Jawa. Saya tak tahu Pak Samudra ni dari Jawa ke dari Sunda ni. Nanti boleh kalau dia kata dalam bahasa Jawa, piye kabare, itu Bu Evi ataupun Evi itu maknanya dia orang Jawa. Kalau dia kata piye kabare, ya. Tapi kalau dia kata kumaha damang, itu masa Sundanese people, lain lagi. Jadi ini Indonesia punya 700 bahasa. Kenapa saya kata itu? Karena 24 Oktober, lebih kurang 26 hari lagi, Indonesia akan memperingati Hari Sumpah Pemuda. Ini macam Pak Samudra lebih muda daripada saya. Jadi Bapak Sumpah Pemuda itu, Puan Evi, itu sudah diperingati sejak tahun 1928. Jadi sebelum Indonesia merdeka, pemuda Indonesia zaman Belanda penjajahan kolonial itu sudah bersumpah bertanah air yang satu, tanah air Indonesia, berbangsa satu, bangsa Indonesia, dan menjunjung bahasa persatuan bahasa Indonesia. Jadi kalaupun kita lihat di Asia Tenggara, pengguna bahasa Melayu lebih kurang 300 juta orang lah. Indonesia campur Malaysia, campur Brunei kan, campur Thailand, South Thailand lah. Oleh kerana itu, you boleh guna bahasa Inggeris, bahasa Malay, bahasa Indonesia. Kalau bahasa Tagalog macam tak faham juga lah. Therefore, kita boleh bercollaboration. The last yang selalu saya bagi kami speed 3 poin saja, saya kena tutup dengan pantun singkat. Lambungkan mimpi setinggi awan. Ini kan kita hari ini cakap innovation kan. Lambungkan mimpi setinggi awan, angin berhembus, awan tersibak. Jadikan visi sebagai rujukan agar inovasi semakin semarak. Wah. Itu pantun last minute dapatkan. Okay, Nabila, thank you very much.
For the introduction video of the ASEAN Lecturer Community, but at listing before we begin to the main session. So now we are entering to our main session today, and with that session 1 discussion. In session 1 discussion, we have Mr. Samudro Seto, PS MBA, as the lecturer of Faculty Economy and Business at Unggul University, Jakarta, Indonesia. He will talk about in our theme today, small medium enterprise, innovation, cultural product development, millennial customer styles. So I would like to greet our speakers today.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sir. For all our speakers today, we'll have 25 minutes to present the material. So,
okay.
Without further ado,
how long? I'm sorry. How long do I have for my session?
25 minutes, sir.
25. All right. Okay.
And then all the question and answer will be not will followed after your session, but will be followed after all of the session ended.
Okay.
All right. And
okay,
then,
that's great. Yeah.
Okay. As your materials ready, begin it anyhow.
Yes. Okay. Okay, can I? Yeah, I'd like to share a slide.
All right, sir.
You are the co-host just now. You can to use by yourself. But supaya saya lebih handsome dari Pak Samudro, saya guna kacamata aja. Oke, silakan Bapak Samudra. Kang Indah, you can to share the as co-host Bapak Samudra for the share this
Yeah.
PowerPoint.
Oke, sebentar.
Tak apa-apa. Nanti saya akan bagi nombor Pak Samudra, nombor Bu Dewi pada Dr. Evi dan sebaliknya supaya boleh terus melanjutkan silaturahimnya selepas ini. Sebab kalau saya bagi sebelum ini tak kenal nanti mungkin tak sayang, tak mengenali. Oke, Kang Indah sudah bagi co-host kepada Pak Samudra ya?
Sudah.
Oke, thank you. Kalau Pak Samudra mau dibantu Kang Indah pun boleh.
Oh, oke, sebentar.
Nah.
Oke, I'll just.
Should you have any requested help, you can request it to our
Never mind, because Mr. Samudra will be to share by you himself, but if he want to help Kang Indah, or you can to share.
Okay.
Okay, Pak, sangat very clear launching and the new product for SMA. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So everyone can see my screen, ya, Pak?
Very clear.
Okay.
Very
great.
clear.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunities for myself to share a little bit about the launching of new products for small medium enterprise, millennials way.
Wow.
I bit curious about the millennials way part, but
yeah.
I do understand that currently the way we manage the product, the way we launch the product is way different than in the past. Yeah, in 10 years ago. I have a background in multinational companies, so I knew it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time, to launch one product. But nowadays, you can launch the product in a seconds. Then all of a sudden your products come up in the internet and you get the traction. You got the consumers coming to your website and buy your product, etc. That's quite a difference. I'll try to share some of my thoughts, some slides. Let's see. Okay, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Samudra Seto. I'm currently a lecturer at Esa Unggul University. I teach strategic management, international business, marketing management. I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Arizona State University, US, and the MBA from University of Central Oklahoma. I'm also certified digital marketing. Currently, I'm also a VP Business Development at PT Platinum Indo Solusi. It's a local company. We basically in the facility management, industry. I'm also consulting in some businesses. My industry backgrounds include consumer goods, telecommunication, IT, and also I work with few startups, multinational companies. I was a marketing manager at APP, Asia Pulp and Paper, and brand manager at Coca-Cola, Reckitt Benckiser. Also head of product at Sony, HTC, and Intel Indonesia. Okay. Okay, let's start our our discussions today about understand that now everyone can launch business and with quite simple, yeah. I mean, not so much not so much requirements and everything, but but now it's quite simple. But first of all, we need to ask ourselves that what is the purpose of your business, our business? Yeah. I believe that the purpose of the main goal for your business is to find business model that is profitable and sustainable. The key is profitable and sustainable. Yeah. I've been to many startups. I'm having a lot of friends from startups, only to find that within 2 years, 3 years, they collapse, and simply because they're not profitable or not sustainable. Yes, they got funding, they receive funding from investors, but business is business. Startup ideally only concerned about the growth, but not anymore. Yeah, the investors also asking about the profit. They need business that is profitable. So regarding what kind of your business, either startups or ordinary business, the main goal that you should have in mind is that your startup or your business should be profitable and sustainable. And basically, we find a way to acquire customers and earn money by serving them. Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, your business need to have a value that consumers can buy, and the consumers can trust your products. Then therefore they give you money for your sustainability, and find out which products that your consumer wants and turn their desires into constant revenue. So that's primarily the purpose of the business. Then when the purpose of your business, yeah, most of small, medium enterprise, they know exactly what they need to do, yeah. But every product or every business should start with the idea, yeah. The great business idea is a combination of 3 things, yeah: problem, solution, and value propositions, yeah. These 3 things, yeah, must be considered. Yeah, these are the essence of the great business idea. Yeah. So let's start with the problem. Yeah. Okay. So business should be should start with understanding there is a problem that they need to solve. Yeah. Any kind of business, we need to think about what sort of problem that they can solve. What is the pain points that you have identified that needs to be solved? Yeah. For example, Grab or Gojek, for example. Yeah. Before they start their business, they knew the pain point. They knew how difficult for our consumers to get the affordable transportation. In Jakarta, macet, is that Jakarta quite, traffic is like, is scary. Yeah. Then and also the public transportation is not good. Yeah. The public transportation is even worse. Gojek comes in and they give a simple solution, which is to facilitate our consumers, yeah, that for them to be able to get the transportation, yeah, affordable transportation, yeah, with their through their applications. Yeah. So that's example of the pain points that Gojek or Grab can see, or Uber can see it from the consumer perspective. Yeah. So what is the pain point that you identified that needs to be solved? What did you find that at least few people are suffering from? Yeah. Then we know the problems. There's a very strong case that the problem is there. Then comes to the second question. Yeah, what is the solution? Yeah, what is the unique proposed business that you will solve the problems? Yeah. So in Gojek case, for example, or Grab case, for example, the solution would be to have a platform that enable, our consumers to contact directly to the car owner or object, is kind of ride-hailing applications. The solution is to enable them to contact to get in touch with the Gojek driver. In vice versa, Gojek drivers also, they would be gladly use this application because they get more customers than before. Before they just stand still in front of on the streets, they just waiting for the consumers. And when the consumers get to them, they cannot give them good price, because they have to think when they take the consumers from point A to point B. From the point B, the Gojek need to going back to the point A, right? To the place, to the station. So I mean, without the passengers. So this is quite, it's quite a problem. But with these applications, they don't need to going back to the stations. They get another passengers by the time they take the passengers to the point of destination. So the solution, okay, well, yes, what is the unique proposed business that will solve the problem? So then the key question here is the unique. The unique means nobody thought before, or your idea is maybe somewhat crazy. Your idea is somewhat nobody think about it before. Then it happens. Okay. So these are the components of the great business idea, good business idea. You have the problem, you understand fully the problem, and you have the solutions. And the last thing is the value that you can serve it to the consumers. What is the value proposition? What is your promise to your consumers? So Gojek promise, Grab promise that consumers will find suitable, or you find suitable mean of transportation by using their applications. This what will make the difference from the rest of the competition. What is your competitive advantage? This is what you think about. I mean, this is what you have to think in your business. Make your business unique, make your business different from the others. And what is most important thing is your competitive advantage. Gojek, Grab, Uber, they all probably competing in the same field. And in Indonesia, for example, Uber lost the battle. Uber basically no longer in the market. So once you get into the market, you need to make sure that you have the differentiation, you have the competitive advantage over your competition. So in a nutshell, the great idea, you must understand the components of the great business idea, which is the problem, the solution, and also the value proposition. So okay, we know all of that. You have the product, you think about it, you have the great products basically. Now it's time to get your product in the markets. Okay, these are the, I will call this a traditional, or is it's a traditional go to the market sequence. First you do market analysis. You understand the consumer needs, markets dynamics, company capabilities, competitions. Then next you have to think about the market segmenting the market selections. And you do the marketing mix, product, price, distributions. Then you need to know how to acquire the customers acquisition, yeah, yeah, evaluation, commitment, referral. I would say that these are the traditional go-to-the-market strategy. Yeah, this is the old-fashioned. The topic today is regarding the the millennial way. Yeah, and I'm sure now there is a shortcut. Yeah, so millennials today's business will think about the shortcuts. Yeah? When I was a brand manager in Coca-Cola, yeah, to launch the product, it takes months, maybe 6 months, just to prepare all the studies, all the research, all the FGDs. We do the concept tests before we even make the samples, for example. Yeah, all this rigorous consumer testing must be done. That was like 20 years ago. Yeah, and Coca-Cola cannot compete anymore. I mean, nobody drink Coca-Cola right now. I mean, even my kids, they don't understand Coca-Cola, Fanta. They drink water. So then Coca-Cola is a problem right now because they have difficulties of getting acceptance, getting the acceptance of the young generation. I mean, I think it's a problem all over the world. They have the problems, and also with the more consumers into health conscious products, they are more health conscious, and they drink water instead. Yeah, so it's kind of problem with the carbonated beverages industry. Yeah, the volume keep decreasing. It's just a nature of the business. So yeah, going back to these topics, these are the go to market process. The traditional, yeah, is too long. Yeah, it's long. You have to have a big funding in order to do this. Yeah, but nowadays maybe we don't need all this. Yeah, maybe we can hack them. Yeah, the concept of hacking, growth hacking, currently, is now popular. Yeah, in the business. Yeah, especially when the startups coming in, they get a lot of investor coming in. Yeah, new startups getting billions of dollars. In a matter of year, 2 years. What happens? There must be something that they did that they hack it. Yeah, they simplify things. A lot of things simplified. So I'm saying that millennials way maybe is different. Different now. Launching the product is different now than before, for sure. Yeah. So the terms growth hacking, it applies to a lot of things. Yeah, in marketing, most of them. Yeah. So this term is found by Sean Ellis in 2010. Yeah, marketing technique and mindset by technology startups using a lean launch model. The key words here is lean. Yeah, simple, lean, fast. Yeah. The main focus is growth first, budget seconds. Yeah, so these startups, they don't think twice before they launch the product. Yeah, because what they interested in, they're interested only the growth. Yeah, not the profit. Yeah, as long as there's a traffic coming into the platform, more people using the platform, they're happy. Yeah, they're quite happy with that. Yeah. So the main focus shifting from the profitability to the growth. Yeah, this is the trick of the growth hacking people. Yeah, the growth hacking strategy. Yeah. Then it uses low cost, innovative alternatives. Yeah, using the data analytics. Yeah, back then in my Coca-Cola day, there was no such thing as a data analytic. What we need to do it ourselves. We need to collect the data. We need to contact people and do the focus group discussion in our office. then we need, and then we do some sort of statistic, extrapolation, and then we come up with the actual numbers, or the numbers, potential numbers of our consumers. That's back in the day, yeah. But now, big data, this is an era of big data, the era of data, yeah. So for this guy, for these people, they don't need to go through all the steps that I took it in my Coca-Cola days, yeah. Yeah, they didn't even need to focus group discussion. They didn't even need to do some the concept tests. There's a lot of tests that Coca-Cola has, like a lot of things, yeah. They don't need to go through all this, yeah. Because what? Because we have the data now, data analytics. Data analytics will kill everything now, yeah. Now it's the name of the game, yeah. Whoever get the data, whoever can basically create the benefit out of the data, then they could get the benefit, yeah. So currently, you might heard that there is a new profession, there's a new hot profession, which is called data scientist, yeah. Data scientists, they are not engineer, yeah. They're not engineer. What they do, they just hack. They just study the data, and they basically with the machine, with the program, with the software, they can come up with, okay, you have the data, then what do you want with it? Do you want to make it as a what? As a food, as a rendang, or as a I don't know, as a nasi goreng. Yeah, you cook it. All the data is there. The data scientist will basically basically to present the data in such way that, okay, this is benefit for the business. Yeah. Okay. The diagram here show you that the data now the growth hacker is a partly marketer and partly developer. Yeah. The growth hacker. Yeah. This guy is. We cannot say they are marketer. Why? Because sometimes they don't believe the brand building. Yeah. When I was a brand manager, yeah, I believe on brand building. Yeah. I was taught that brand has to give two benefit. Yeah. Product has to give two benefit to consumers. The psychological benefit and the functional benefit. Yeah. For example, Coca-Cola. Then they give you the physiological benefit. You drink Coca-Cola, then you quench your thirst. You're not thirsty anymore. That's the physiological benefit for your body. But it must give you also the psychological benefit. Why? What psychological benefit means? That's why we create the brand promise, the brand architecture in such a way that consumers, when they consume our product, they could feel like, okay, I'm a happy person. I'm a something like that. So those are the job of brand manager in the past. Now they hack it. They don't care about the brand. No more. No need to have a brand architecture. No need to have a brand. Value proposition, brand. Brand components. No, they hack it. Yeah. So a marketer, and it's a combination of marketer and developer, yeah, with a data developer. So this guy is a growth hacker, and this guy, more and more people in this industry like this, yeah. Traditional brand building is no longer appreciated. I would say not appreciated because, well, at the end of the day, you need to have a volume, right? You need to have a business. You need to have more consumers, more volume, yeah, more money getting into your business. Yeah, you cannot afford having understanding your brand and creating brand architecture, creating the brand promise, brand imagery, blah blah blah. No. Okay, yeah, that's a millennials way to launch the products. Okay, go on. Okay, what is the hacking means? Okay, instead of going through all the steps mentioned in the go-to-market steps that I just mentioned, they need just to focus on three things. Yeah. Step one, they test your value and hypothesis. Step two, develop minimal viable products, yeah, to test your idea. And step three, yeah, build, measure, learn, yeah, it's as fast as often as possible. Yeah. So then we know now we hack it. We don't go through all those steps in the part that I just mentioned. Yeah, the go-to-market step, go-to-market step. Okay, let's see one by one here, real quick. Yeah, step one. Sorry. Yeah, step one is a test your hypothesis. Yeah, test your value or hypothesis. Yeah, so yeah, basically the product, you need to come up with two hypotheses. Yeah, first is your value hypothesis. Yeah, your product will deliver value to the consumers. Yeah, that early adapters can embrace the products. Yeah, you have to make sure that you develop your MVP. Yeah, to test this. Yeah, develop product value and also the product growth hypothesis. Your product will not only appeal to the small early adopters, but it can be scalable into the big market. Yeah, into the bigger market. Yeah, example, Facebook, Grab, when they first launched, they just tested in the campus. Yeah, the founder of the Facebook just launched the product as it is. Yeah, no perfection. Yeah, they just get in there and see what's the response of the colleague, the college students, yeah, the friends. Yeah, then it turned out that the consumers is very excited about it, and they, they get into the Facebook websites about 2 or 3 times a day. So this is like, that's the example that you deliver the value to consumer. Consumer wants it, so they go to your application. They try it. They try it with happy. Yeah. Okay. Then again, what is the growth? Yeah, product will not only appeal to the small and the adopters, yeah, but only can be scalable. Yeah. So example of Facebook, yeah, the product get more popularity, and they get popularity. They invite people, the students invite, and then all of a sudden, you have lots of college students, in this platform. So the Facebook meet this criteria, yeah, the value, the product value hypothesis, and also the product growth hypothesis. Yeah. Okay. Okay, then MVP, number 2, the MVP. Yeah, only 3 steps. Yeah, first, yeah, they understand yeah. Step 1, test or value hypothesis. Step 2, you develop the MVP or minimal viable products. Yeah, I said minimal is just enough to be tested, just enough to be representing the real product. Yeah, back then in my Coca-Cola day, for example, yeah, we cannot afford having half done products to be tested in the market. It has to be as perfect as it will be launched. The mentality is like that. Yeah, the mentality is like that. So imagine how long, yeah, how long did we spend, to get the product that it's almost, that's it must represent the real one. Yeah, it's going to be too long. Before that, you lose time, you lose competition, you lose everything. Yeah. Now we hack it. Yeah. Now the small medium enterprise, the millennials way, they hack this product testing. Yeah. They just need to develop the MVP, the minimal viable product. Yeah. Yeah. So MVP is not a product. It's a process. Yeah. So just enough. Yeah. So there's enough future benefits to early adopters. Yeah, MVP is all about getting users feedback as fast as possible. This is the key. You need to get the feedback from the users, yeah, as fast as possible. Yeah, back in the Coca-Cola day, for example, you don't need to wait too long just to get the response from the consumer that your product is very sweet. Yeah, yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. You wait and you spend all these times, to get the feedback from the consumer that okay, this is very sweet. Yeah, in fact, yeah, nowadays you just get in there. Yeah, you develop the MVP. Final product may be different from the MVP, but that's okay. In fact, MVP could be a concept also. It's okay. It's just enough to demonstrate the people willing to trade or people willing to buy. That's more important thing. This is the acceptable. That's more important thing. Okay. Okay. The step 3. Yeah. Step 3. As I said, we hack it. Yeah. Build, measure, learn. Yeah. BML. The BML process. Yeah. Once you get the MVP, meaning that you have tested the product, the concept, you got it, then you launch it in the market. Yeah, but yeah, you also need to know that this is not the final product. Therefore, you must be open to modify it, or take it back, make it better. Yeah, build, measure, learn. It's going to be a cycle. Yeah, so build MVP version just enough to get the consumer response, and then roll it to the market. Yeah, take the product to the actual market and get the feedback to measure interest. Yeah, the key here is to measure interest. Yeah, learn what consumer wants, what impression, opinions, and then use it to optimize product to the next cycle. That's okay. You cannot have perfect product, at the very beginning. Just example like Gojek. Yeah, a lot of miss here, miss that. That's fine. Yeah, maybe the system not good. That's fine. Yeah, but don't you launch it and then you fix it, get it done repetitively. Okay. Right. Then what next after that? Yeah. Okay, that 3 step done. What next? Okay, these are the 3 advices. Yeah, advice. Yeah. First of all, it doesn't hurt to develop a split test. For example, you create 1 sample, you create 2 samples instead of 1. So when consumers, perceptions, which one they prefer, things like that. So you develop this test. Sometimes you have a version A and then you have version B that totally different than version A. Yeah, you just play around with it. So make a develop split test, that we call it. Yeah, and be open-minded that sometimes your your product may not need to be perfect. Yeah, then it will split. It will pivots to other function. For example, for example, your product, for example, in the Gojek case, the Gojek case, like today, the money coming from Gojek, not from the ride hailing, not the ride hailing business. Not ride hailing business is losing money right now because Gojek need to spend also to subsidize. Yeah. Now they have different functions. Yeah, they have different businesses like GoFood, like GoMart, like a lot of even GoMassage, for example. Yeah, that's what we call it a pivots. That we call pivots, meaning that you have to be open-minded. Sometimes your business cannot be as you wish to be, but they might be slightly changing the direction, changing the consumer mindset, changing the segment, the channel. It could happen, but it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. You have to have a mindset like that. I mean, yes, we understand that, you know, as a businessman, you have to be preserved. Yeah, you have to be committed. But why, if the business, I mean, your product is not is intended to be like that, so that's fine. Yeah,
Okay, there is
and
3 minutes
yeah,
more.
yeah. So use the right metrics. Yeah, that's the last one is use the right metric. Yeah, meaning don't you need to focus on what actually the right metrics. Sometimes there's a lot of metrics. Yeah, for example, like how many people like this product. Well, that's fine. Yeah, a lot of likes means positive, right? But it doesn't pay the bill for sure. Yeah, it doesn't translate it into the money. Yeah, better you focus on, for example, the number of uh, recommendation. For example, people recommend it. Yeah, is better. Number of member of paying. The member who willing to pay, something like that. So use the metrics. The last one is focus on one engine of growth. One engine of growth means like this, yeah. Engine of growth means the business must be full, right? Must be there's a engine of growth that push the business or your product. Sometimes, yeah, one could be you focus on the retain your consumers, your existing consumers. The second a growth engine could be awareness of viral. So you work on the viral thing. You work on the marketing part, that you create the viral business. Yeah, or you pay the paid engine. Yeah, so you pay you pay your pay the growth, the engine, like Google SOE stuff, and engine optimization, something like that. Focus on one only. Focus on one. If you wanna make to retain your consumers, just focus one first. Yeah, don't make a lot of aims. Yeah, but you end up not optimizing all of them.
Okay,
Okay.
3 minutes more.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's about it, Pak.
Yeah, 3 minutes more. 3 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So again, yeah. Basically, as my conclusion is that now the process of launching new products is way different, yeah, than before. Yeah. What you call it millennials way is much more different, yeah, than before. Before you need to have as a perfect as product as possible. You need to go through all the studies, get more data, get more consumer research, get then after that, all this data you need to basically do it yourself. You need to make sure that this data, yeah, that you have, is good data, so you can analyze it and then benefit to your strategy, something like that. Then back then back then you need to develop the brand for sure, yeah. By being, you create the brand. Sometimes we create I remember we have to project a brand as a human being. For example, they have the emotion, they have the they have the anger, they have the appetite, something like that. So that's what we did before. That's what Unilever, Coca-Cola, all these consumer goods, is doing. Yeah, they create, the brand development process is quite rigorous. Yeah, quite rigorous. Now there's a concept of hacking strategy. Yeah, by hacking strategy, you basically bypassing a lot of things, a lot of brand building steps and everything. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's not important. Yeah, I'm not saying that this is the good one. Of course, at the end of the day, you need to have a sustainable and brand for sure. But the way to do it now is different than before. That's what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm not going to underemphasize the my Coca-Cola and Unilever's studies. Yeah, no, but yeah, again, now it's come the hacking strategy, the hacking, hacking way to do the business. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
hacking is partly developer and partly a marketer. Yeah, and in between. Yeah, they're not fully marketers. They're not also fully the developers. Yeah, they're in between. And these people come up with different product. Fast. They come up with,
Okay.
all the startups product that fast, and yeah, as we see, yeah, in industry. Okay, thank you, Pak. I think I'll
Very
use up my
interesting.
time.
Very
Okay.
interesting. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much, Mr. Samudro Seto, for such a rich materials to begin our main session today. That is, of course, we can take a lot of takeaways from your materials today. I honestly feel like I am in one of my MBA classes just right now doing 2 hours credit. So I see now we are
Every after
okay, without wasting too much time, let's move to our next session. Session 2 discussion. We have Mrs. Nur Fadiha Mokhtar PhD as the lecturer of University Malaysia from Terengganu. And I would like to give our screen to Mr. Fadiha to present the materials today. Are you ready to begin the session?
All right, thank you, Ms. Nabila. Okay, let me share the slides.
yes, please. Because nobody used the chocolate dress. I use the kacamata chocolate candy. Okay.
All right. All right, so assalamualaikum, very good afternoon to all of you. Okay, especially to Pak Tengku Reza for inviting me for these sessions, and my presenters friend, okay, and also to the audience and also participants in this afternoon webinars. Okay, so let me introduce myself. My name is Nur Fadiha Mokhtar. I'm from UC Malaysia Terengganu, Malaysia. Okay, my area of expertise is marketing, digital marketing, and entrepreneurship. So basically, my PhD is more into the digital marketing. So I did my PhD in Australia, and most of my research are more into like the usage of digital or the usage of technology for the small and medium enterprises. Okay, so I also involved with the community knowledge transfer program, where my focus actually mainly for the SMEs, and how I'm going to encourage them to use the digital technology for their business. And today, the topic that been given to me is about the SMEs again, innovations, and also cultural products development that mainly focus for the millennials consumer style. Okay, so when I received this topic from Pak Tengku Reza, I was surprised actually. I was surprised. Yeah, it's something like quite interesting. Is I'll say that this is the first time I'm going to share with you all about the cultural products development. Okay, and luckily that this cultural product is quite close to me, because in my area, okay, in my state, mainly focus or highlighted more into the cultural products. Okay, before I proceed, let me share with you the slides. Okay, about the overview of my state of Terengganu. Okay, so this one is about the cultural products. Okay, the main topic of today, and I was being informed that today is a National Batik Day, right, Pak Reza?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I think we should wear batik furthermore. Okay, for today. Yeah. I didn't know that, but okay, I'm happy to share about the cultural products here, and mainly looking for the batik. Okay, so actually based on the slides, we can see that when we talk about the cultural product, is something to do with the arts. Okay, when we talk about art, it's something that very broad and subjective, and basically it covers with the various of views. It can be in terms of the performance arts, it can be in terms of virtual arts, architecture. Okay, we have the heritage conservations, the cultural industries, and also the festival. Okay, and today I'm going to share with you about the batik, which is a part of the visual arts. So we can see that in the slides is about the Malaysian map. Okay, the one that I round is my hometown, Kuala Terengganu. So you can see that, and from that map, we are lying on the by the South China Sea. Okay, it's east coast of Malaysia. So if you are from Kuala Terengganu, it will take about 5 to 7 hours drive from Kuala Lumpur to Terengganu, or by if you take a flight, it will take around 45 minutes. Okay, so here I share with you landmarks of Terengganu. So we can know that Terengganu is about the still highlighting the traditional lifestyle. Okay, it's like kampong lah, it's a village, because when we lie on the coastal area, okay, most of our main activities related to the maritime sector, like fishermen, something to do with the boat making, and something or the related to the islands, tourism, and so on. Okay, so from that, on the right hand side, you can see that a bridge, we call as a this one, as I shared in the before we start the webinar, is one of the new landmarks of Terengganu that we call as a drawbridge. Okay, just like a London Bridge, a little bit. Okay, so that bridge is can be uncut. Okay, can be open and closed. Okay, mainly for the maritime activities. I mean, like if mainly for the boats to pass over the bridge. Okay, and you can see that on the below of that bridge. Okay, and the next photo is like a beca, trishaw. Is our traditional transportation before, and right now we are having the issues, and also because there will be less people interested to pursue with these professions. Okay, most of the young people prefer to may like use the motorbikes, motorcycle, cars, motorcar, okay, motorcycle, and so on, rather than this one, this. Okay, so because even right now the industry getting down because of there'll be less people that interested, one thing, and then there'll be less of income. I mean, like you have to wait for the customers. I mean, like the payment. I mean, like the bayaran. Okay, it's not that expensive. It's under the hot sun, you know. So the young people is not interested to continue this kind of business or this kind of professions. Okay, so let me move to the other side. On the left hand side, you can see like the photos of the island. This is the example of a few islands, okay, that we have in Terengganu. Okay, so we have like Kapas Island, Perhentian Island, and Redang Island. Okay, so that one is not that far from Kuala Terengganu. It would take around 1 hour using a boat or speedboat, or we have also ferry, chartered ferry to that island. Okay, and we also quite famous with the Turtle Conservation Center. Turtle. Okay, even for my university, University Malaysia Terengganu, also have the turtle, our own Turtle Conservation Center, and we also have the research island somewhere in Pulau Bidong that is gazetted for our universities only, that mainly for the research for, yeah. So we also encourage the volunteers to participate for these kind of conservation activities. And I'm sure Pak Reza also can capture the third picture from the left hand side is a Koropok Lekor. Okay, the one that Pak Reza said in the earlier webinars. That is our keropok leko. This is our our traditional or well-known food in Terengganu. It's a must for you to buy or bring back the keropok leko when you arrive in Terengganu. Same goes like if we go to Indonesia, it's a must to buy what cake kan Pak Reza?
Betul,
I don't know,
betul.
cake
Yeah.
lapis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a must to bring back a cake lapis. So
Yeah.
same goes like Terengganu.
Right.
And the fourth one is about the Masjid Crystal, the one that also Pak Reza said in the earlier about the Taman Tamadun Islam. Okay, this one also is one of the landmarks in Terengganu. So basically, we are slightly different. If you compare Terengganu and Kuala Lumpur, definitely we have the different kind of landscape and activities as well as perspective. So we are still maintain the traditional culture in Terengganu. Okay, so here we are for the batik, one of the cultural products in Terengganu. Okay, so basically, batik was heavily influenced by trade relations between Malay Peninsula and also Indonesian coastal cities. Okay, so I think I'll say that Malaysia and Indonesia are very close with the batik. Okay, and in Malaysia, most there'll be three countries that are very focused for the Malaysian batiks, which are Kelantan, Terengganu, and Pahang. Okay, that three states lying on the coastal area of Malaysia. So Malaysian batik basically become an important parts of the Malaysian wear and culture. So, but the thing is, the issue of the Malaysian batik, okay, is about the price. Okay, when we talk about the price, it's quite expensive compared to others batik in the world. Okay, it's quite expensive compared like Indonesian batik because there will be a difference within the Malaysian batik and also the Indonesian batik. Okay, for Malaysian batik, basically you can not notify the Malaysian batik is more colorful compared to Indonesian batik. And one more thing is Malaysian batik, we are using the hand drawing. I mean, like we use the it's not like a stamping or it's not like using a block. Okay, so they based on the creativity of the artisan to draw the design. Okay, and on all the I mean like that kind of ideas. Okay, and then well, another thing is about the process. The process of Malaysian batik is quite I'm not saying that it's technical, but it will take longer time. Okay, because we do it manually and traditionally. Okay, but that one I'm going to explain further in the following slides. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the Malaysian batik. That is the overview. Okay, so I'm not sure about my Indonesian batik, but the thing is for Malaysian batik, it means like drawing out with wax. Okay, we have to sketch the drawing. I mean the designs, and we are using a small pen. It's like a brass pen. Okay, that have very small tip at the end. Okay, and then we need to dip in the wax and start draw it in the cloth on the cloth. Okay, so basically in Malaysia, the fabric carries the motif of flora and fauna, geometry, and more focus on the landscape of nature. And we normally use prefer to use the vibrant colors, bold prints, and versatility. And even in Malaysia, we have numbers of type of cloth, okay, that we use for batik drawing, such as cotton, viscose, and also silk. But for silk, definitely is more expensive compared to the cotton. Okay, but the thing is, due to the weather in Malaysia is quite I mean like pretty hot here, so most of the users prefer to use cotton batik rather than silk batik. So for the silk, mainly for special events or maybe for special occasions. And slowly from that also they come up with the initiative to come up with the many kind of products, okay, such as kaftan, sarong, pillowcase bags, and so on. Okay, as I said, we have two type, hand-drawn and also block print. Okay, so for block print is quite cheaper compared to hand-drawn. Okay, and that metal block is specially designed by the owner of the business to show the trademarks of that particular products. Okay, so you can see that in the picture here. Okay, it's about the metal block. Okay, the block print metal block. Okay, that one is quite heavy because it's from the copper, if I'm not mistaken, tembaga, from the tembaga. It's very heavy, and there'll be some block from the tembaga, okay, copper, and also some of the blocks from wooden block. Okay, so the design is quite I would say that technical. Okay, and it's required for sometimes to draw to come out with that block. Okay, if you Google in the Shopee whatsoever, you can see that some of the sellers sells that block maybe less than hundreds, but it depends on the type of the designs. Okay. Okay, here the places, and we you can find Malaysian batik somewhere everywhere in Malaysia. It can be like the famous one in Pasar Payang, which is our central market. Okay, and you can find it in the boutiques along boutiques in Terengganu, even in Kuala Lumpur, everywhere in Malaysia. Okay, and we also have the social media channel. It really helps, okay, to boost up the batik business, and also you can find the batik in the e-shopping mall, but e-shopping malls such as Shopee, Lazada, and etc. Okay, but the thing is, the topic that been given, that is the introductions of the batik, but the topic that been given to me is about the product innovations um, of the cultural products. Okay, so here I'm going to share and discuss with you about the product innovations mainly for the batik by relying on the I'm relying more into the product innovation models by Buis 2000. Okay, so I'm going to start one by one here. Okay, it's about business environment. Okay, so you can see that in the slides again, the COVID-19 really affected the local business, really affected, because in Malaysia we have to a few phases of the movement controls order. Okay, we are not allowed there. The government didn't allow the businesses to operate the business for a certain period of time, and they'll be looking for, even the authority been given to the for the business who really more into the essential business rather than clothing business, apparel business, or other business. Okay, so it's really affected. We've been experienced the COVID-19 for almost 2 years, and slowly, okay, and I think if in Terengganu itself, okay, the batik business starts open their business again last couple of weeks ago, but it takes time because Malaysian government still not allowed the interstate travel, because most of the local tourists in Malaysia, okay, from Kuala Lumpur, from other states. We depends more to the others local tourists rather than, rather in Terengganu people itself, because yeah, so every time people outsiders or come to Terengganu, definitely they were looking for the batik, because Terengganu tend to sell cheaper batik because you can get directed from the manufacturer of batik maker, okay, rather than you have to purchase from the retailers and in the mall. For example, like the price in Terengganu, you can get, like say 100 ringgit, 100 ringgit for the batik, but when you get it from Kuala Lumpur, at Kuala Lumpur, it might cost you 300 ringgit. Yeah, so that's why people love to come to Terengganu instead of having our good beaches here, but also we're going to have like Korofaleko and also our batik here. Okay, yes. And when that will be like when we talk about the business environment, one thing is about the COVID-19. Another thing is about the batik block. Okay, that mean like there'll be less people or young people interested to pursue this career, being like a batik block operators. I mean like they are not interested to be like involved in the batik making business because of the it's quite tedious, it will take longer, you know, it's very hard. I mean like it's not a glamorous professions. Okay, there'll be less people interested to pursue the career. And not here in Terengganu, there'll be like only elderly people that still continue the business, but we if you notice that how long they're going to continue the business, because when you need someone who really have a skill to draw the batik. It's about the creativity, it's about the imaginary. That's one of the issue, the business environments that faced by the batik operators. Okay, so another thing is about the batik. Okay, so we also have like the challenges from others outsiders batik, such as batik from Sarawak. Okay, but Sarawak also have their own batik. Okay, even we have competitors from Indonesian batik. Okay, so Indonesian batik, I would say that is slightly cheaper. Okay, they come up with various of design that give the impact to the Terengganu batik itself. Okay, so and furthermore, okay, the Malaysian batik, we are looking like most of the products come out from the I'll say that it's not sensitive. I mean like a fragile type of cloth. Okay, from the silk. Okay, so in terms of to take care of the cloth is quite tedious. Cerewet. Okay, a lot of step. You know, like you can something like and one more thing is there will be the fashion industry in Malaysia. So the young people basically prefer to wear jeans, t-shirts rather than our traditional costume. Okay, so you said that it's too the batik is too colorful, too glamorous. Some of the young people is not interested. I'm sure, but in Indonesia, I do believe that in many Indonesians tend to wear batik, Indonesian batik, most of the day. Okay, most of the day. But in Malaysia, there we have different kind of environments. Okay, based on the one of the reports from the newspaper said that almost 50% of Malaysians didn't own or didn't experience wearing a batik in their lifetime. Okay, so I'm sure it's totally contradict with Indonesia. Okay, yeah, Indonesia, you are proud of wearing your own batik, but in Malaysia, that we experienced adversely. Okay, so yeah, so here, okay, so the governments noticed that. Okay, so we come out with a few business strategies, a few initiatives to encourage more people to wear the batik. Okay, so here about the innovations that they come out with the to attract more young people or Malaysians to wear batik. So one of the initiative, they converted the batik into the souvenirs, is come up with a design that more innovative, like more hipster. Okay, in other words, like more vibrant to attract the preferences of the young people. Okay, and on top of it, okay, the government also encourage the operators, the batik operators, to explore, okay, the technology, the innovations, to be more creative, okay, in designing the products. Okay, because we say that the let's say preference of the young people is not too floral, Okay, maybe the young people prefer something like abstract or geometric. So basically the trends right now moving from floral to geometric or abstract. Okay, so that is one of the initiative. Okay, and here they come up with a new product design instead of like
Wow.
a shirts or whatsoever. They come up to encourage more Malaysians to wear batik or having batik by convert it or come out with the let's say come in tote bag, aprons, okay, headscarf, even the baju kurung, which is our national costume. Okay, so even they come out with the tablecloth, the what call it, banyak lagi lah, a lot of things, pillowcase, okay, something like from the kain batik, from the batik itself. Okay, and believe it or not, this one is not that cheap. It's quite it's, I'll say that it's more slightly expensive, but it's worth buying. Okay, because of that kind of quality. Okay. Okay, and when we talk about the product development, okay, as I mentioned in the a few slides before, okay, about the process. So here we can see that in the batik making process, it covers 8 processes. Okay, 8 process. Okay, where I'll say that is tedious, which is definitely is not encourage the young people to participate or involve in the batik making. We start from the cloth stretching, tegangkan kain, okay, and then we start like a chanting drawing. Okay, we dyeing where we put the colors on the cloth, and then we color fixing. Okay, we do the color fixing where we have to put in the water for a few hours, okay, and let the colors fade out, okay, and the excess color fade out. Okay, we soak and we rinse, okay, bilas, okay, we boil in the hot water, okay, and again we do the final rising, okay, bilas semula, okay, with the softener, because we need to put the softener in the step 7. If not, the kind will tend to be like keras, you know, very hard, you know, keras. And then the last step is about drying. And another thing is, we know that in the East Coast, we have like monsoon season. Monsoon season start October until February. So there will be the problem to the batik operator when the monsoon season is coming in. Okay, they cannot dry the kain, the cloth. So definitely the production might be slow. Okay, during that time. Okay, that is the issues. Okay, and you can see that when they use like put the color step number 3 dyeing, okay, color fixing, soaking and everything, they put a chemical, and then and they have to cleanse the like the bekas or what, the kind of hot pot, okay, with the all the chemical, okay, for the color fixing dyeing, and it creates another issue where water contaminated, air tercemar because of that chemical. Okay, they give the impact to the environment. Okay, so again, they encourage a new product development to the batik maker, okay, to use like a eco-friendly products or using the natural dyes. Okay, so right now they're trying to shift the dimensions from using the chemical into the natural dye by using like vegetable scrap or let's say product mesra alam eco products. Okay, so some of the natural dyes that might use are the turmeric, kunyit for the yellow color, okay, and from the jackfruit, jackfruit nangka, yeah, Pak Rizal? Nangka, yeah. Nangka, I think the colors, and then from the onion, bawang, okay, and bunga telang. Apa, kembang telang in Indonesia, kembang telang for the purple indigo color. So they use that. Okay, so they try to use that natural products for the batik, okay, in order to reduce the water contaminations is one of the initiative. Okay. Okay, and the next process in the product innovations will be the launch of the products. So we can see that the product is quite cantik lah. It's very nice with the aprons, with the tie, with the small punch. Okay, is kata a new dimensions of the batik instead of having like a shirt or baju kurung or a dress. They come up with the different kind of products. Okay, and actually when they come up with the new innovations, product innovations, it gives the new business opportunity. For example, like for the they can have like for the physical store, they still can sell the products in the boutiques in the market. Okay, like Pasar Payang just now, or they can still can sell the products into the online Shopee, Lazada, okay, or any e-shopping mall, okay, and also they give a new opportunity to the supplier. Why I say that to the new supplier? Because of they using the natural dyes products, mean like new opportunity for like say for those who supply for the onions, for those who supply for jackfruit, because this batik operator going to use that kind of products for their batik making. Okay, and the last one, they also give the opportunity for the dropship agent. Okay, this how the thing is, because before the introductions of the technology, we didn't know about the dropship agent actually. Okay, but with the technology, now we come up with a new job, a new opportunities known as a dropshipper. Okay, at the end of the day, it gives like the business sustainability as well as we save the environment, okay, to all the community. Okay, and here, okay, how to encourage the millennial consumer style. Okay, so in Malaysia, last few years, we encourage all the government servants to wear the batik every Thursday. Penjawat awam, okay, civil servant to wear batik every Thursday. And right now we have like Berjaya Corporation Berhad, which is our GLC giant company in Malaysia, also promoting batik as one of the pakaian rasmi lah, okay, for them. And they also for the fashion designers, they try to collaborate with others designers out of Malaysia to promote batik to the world, okay. And also they try to commercial the local batik by having like something that contemporary as well as being accepted by all. It's not just mainly for the elderly people. Okay, they also target for let's say young people. And one of the latest one is that we also host the batik run in Malaysia. So for those who are trying the run, the marathon, they need to wear batik. Okay, just to encourage the batik users and introduce batik to Malaysian. Okay, so that they will feel love wearing or using the batik. Okay, so I think that's all from me, Pak Reza. Thank you very much.
Wow, menambah saya mau pakai batik. Makanya sekarang saya tadi batik Indonesia, sekarang saya guna batik Malaysia.
Ya, boleh.
Ini sudah guna nih batik Malaysia.
Sudah guna?
Ini macam mana? Ya kan? Ini batik
tukar baju dah.
batik
Ya.
Malaysia. Jadi Ibu Dewi sudah bagi tahu saya, Pak Reza itu batik Indonesia, batik Malaysia mana? Jadi saya pakailah. Okay. Now we can to listen the song of videos. The
All right. Now we are moving on to our session 3 discussion, and in this session we have Mrs. Dewi Nurbaiti Eskom MM as a lecturer from Jami Institute Jakarta, Indonesia, and she will talk about in our theme today. So an SMA, small medium enterprise inclusion culture products development, millennial customer styles. I would like to invite Mrs. Dewi Nurbaiti to have the screen to
Oke.
present her material
Terima
today.
kasih, Miss Nabila.
Yes, welcome. I would also like to inform once again that every speaker will have 35 minutes to present the material today. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Nabila. Baik, Bapak Ibu, Pak Reza, Ibu Nur, dan Bapak Samudro, izin saya menyampaikan presentasi sore hari ini dengan bahasa. Saya sampaikan dalam bahasa Indonesia, singkat saja setelah tadi memperhatikan presentasi dari Bapak Ibu dan terutama Ibu Nur Fadiha, ada kemiripan antara penceritaan mengenai batik seperti itu. Baik Bapak Ibu dan rekan-rekan mahasiswa yang hadir sore hari ini, saya slideshow
Sekarang
sebentar.
pun pakai masker batik juga. Oke.
Iya, seperti itu Pak. Ini salah satu produk batik yang semakin inovatif seperti itu, tidak hanya dalam bentuk pakaian saja, tapi banyak barang lain gitu yang bisa digunakan dengan menggunakan motif batik. Di sini saya angkat judul Batik Industry During Pandemic, sebuah small research yang saya lakukan. Di mana di awal juga saya menyampaikan mengenai sejarah batik yang sama-sama kita ketahui, banyak negara yang memiliki motif batiknya sendiri-sendiri seperti itu, sama halnya dengan Indonesia yang telah dikenal terkait batik ini sejak abad ke-12 gitu ya, berdasarkan data yang saya dapatkan. Beberapa negara di sini saya tampilkan yang juga memiliki motif batiknya sendiri-sendiri gitu ya, coraknya sendiri, dan tentunya setiap corak memiliki filosofi atau maknanya, seperti Indonesia dan Malaysia pastinya memiliki corak sendiri, Kamerun, negara Kamerun punya, Tiongkok juga, Thailand juga memiliki ragam batik sendiri. Dan di batik ini yang dimiliki oleh masing-masing negara, tiap-tiap negara ini tentu penggunaannya juga berbeda-beda seperti itu. Kalau di Indonesia banyak digunakan sebagai produk fashion, kalau di Thailand bentuknya juga bisa digunakan berupa kain sarung dengan kombinasi warna tertentu yang memiliki makna-makna tersendiri. Jadi memang benar sekali bukan cuma Indonesia saja gitu ya, tapi lebih banyak dari negara yang saya sajikan dalam slide ini, tentu saja mereka juga memiliki ragam batiknya sendiri. Berbicara soal batik dikaitkan dengan industri, di sini saya dapatkan data bahwa nilai ekspor batik dari tahun 2012 hingga tahun 2020 mengalami penurunan. Mungkin kalau 2020 kita melihatnya terjadi pandemi, jadi tidak hanya sektor batik yang mengalami penurunan angka penjualan, tetapi juga sektor-sektor lainnya. Tetapi bisa diamati tren dari tahun 2015, 2016 hingga 2020 terus mengalami penurunan. Nah, di sini sebagai generasi muda gitu, rekan-rekan mahasiswa yang hadir sore hari ini mungkin bisa menelaah lebih jauh lagi kira-kira apa nih yang terjadi sehingga nilai ekspor batik kita mengalami penurunan. Padahal kalau kita lihat, terdapat 47.000 industri kecil menengah, IKM gitu ya, atau UMKM, usaha kecil menengah, yang mereka bergerak di bidang batik. Terdapat 101 sentra batik, cukup banyak sentra batik di Indonesia. Terdapat juga 200 pengrajin batik tulis alami, dan di sini ada angka yang kami dapatkan bahwa terdapat 3.000 produksi kain batik tulis per bulan. Ini sebuah angka yang besar. Harapannya dengan teknologi yang semakin maju, penjualan sudah bisa digitalize semuanya, nilai ekspor batik khususnya Indonesia bisa meningkat di masa-masa mendatang. Begitu juga terkait motif batik, cukup banyak pilihan motif batik yang Indonesia miliki. Di sini saya sajikan angka 5.849 motif batik di Indonesia, data tahun 2015. Motifnya sangat banyak, pilihannya banyak, mestinya hal ini bisa menjadi keunggulan gitu ya, atau dasar untuk para pelaku usaha atau sektor-sektor swasta untuk bisa membantu nilai ekspor batik agar meningkat kembali. Saat ini penggunaan pakaian batik juga sudah semakin banyak seperti itu ya, semakin banyak orang menggunakan batik. 95,54% responden memiliki baju batik. Jadi hampir semua orang yang ditanya punya baju batik nggak di rumah, mereka memiliki baju batik seperti itu ya. Walaupun mungkin penggunaannya beda-beda. Mungkin mereka ada yang punya baju batik tapi baju rumahan, misalnya ibu-ibu di rumah senang pakai baju dress batik atau kemeja batik untuk yang prianya. Di sini juga responden menyampaikan kapan sih mereka biasanya menggunakan batik gitu ya. Yang kita banggakan ini 37% mengatakan hari-hari tertentu saja yang memang diwajibkan menggunakan batik di kantor atau di maaf Bapak Ibu, atau di kampus gitu ya. Karena sudah beberapa tahun terakhir memang di kantor, di perusahaan, atau di kampus-kampus perguruan tinggi mewajibkan di satu hari tertentu kita pakai batik ya, misalnya Jumat, seperti itu. Kemudian di acara-acara resmi juga sudah semakin orang menganggap, oh batik nih baju formal, seperti itu, atau acara pernikahan dan acara-acara lain. Jadi di sini menggambarkan dalam banyak aktivitas seseorang di kehidupan sehari-harinya sangat dekat dengan batik gitu ya, sangat dekat dengan industri batik. Kalau saat ini WFH atau online learning gitu, biar rapi, tetap rapi, paling simpel ya apa nih, mungkin cari kemeja ya udah batik gitu ya, yang aman gitu, akan terlihat rapi. Mengikuti seminar atau menghadiri pernikahan secara online seperti itu, kita juga terbiasa menggunakan pakaian batik. Nah, ini beberapa contoh tren fashion batik yang sebenarnya potensinya untuk bisa dikembangkan lebih baik lagi, lebih luas lagi, seperti itu, hingga kita bisa melakukan ekspor lebih baik lagi terkait batik. Ini banyak hal yang sebenarnya kehidupan sehari-hari seseorang tuh sangat dekat loh dengan batik. Mulai dari homeware, misalnya ibu-ibu yang nyaman menggunakan dress batik di rumah, atau sport aktif juga ada kaos-kaos yang sekarang motifnya sudah batik, tapi t-shirt seperti itu. Atau yang sebelah kiri bawah sudah menjadi tren juga masker, di mana kita diwajibkan menggunakan masker sampai dengan hari ini. Ada beberapa yang menggunakan masker kain gitu ya, dengan motif batik yang tentu saja perlu dilapisi dengan masker medis juga tentunya. Tapi di sini sudah semakin terlihat bahwa motif batik atau seni batik itu sebenarnya sudah semakin luas penggunaannya. Atau yang bekerja dari rumah. Bekerja dari rumah juga terkadang memilih baju batik atasan biar aman, bawahnya pakai celana pendek aja atau pakai celana panjang biasa gitu, yang penting ke atas terlihat rapi. Batik menjadi pilihan yang begitu cepat diputuskan gitu ya. Kemudian terkait apa saja sih yang sebenarnya bisa dilakukan atau inovasi-inovasi apa saja yang bisa dilakukan agar industri batik kita, di mana hari ini kita memperingati Hari Batik, industri batiknya juga bisa semakin tumbuh dengan baik. Ada beberapa stimulus yang bisa diberikan untuk pelaku usaha perbatikan atau di industri batik. Yang pertama, entah dari pihak swasta atau dari pemerintah khususnya bisa memberikan bantuan permesinan dan potongan harga misalnya. Permesinan untuk mencetak kainnya, atau jika ada batik printing juga membutuhkan alat-alat tertentu, mungkin bisa ada support dalam bentuk hal tersebut. Agar apa? Agar proses penciptaan batiknya bisa lebih cepat, lebih baik, bisa memenuhi keinginan pasar. Kalau demand-nya tinggi, produksinya juga harus tinggi gitu, sehingga kebutuhan pasar bisa dijawab dalam waktu yang cepat. Atau terkait pendanaan, adanya relaksasi kredit, terkait bunga atau modal kerja seperti itu untuk UMKM, mereka juga bisa dibantu misalnya dari pihak pemerintah agar mudah mendapatkan pinjaman dengan bunga yang bersahabat gitu ya, semata-mata untuk bisa membantu Indonesia dari sisi industri batiknya agar lebih maju. Atau diadakan pelatihan, pendampingan, peningkatan kompetensi dan mutu produk perajin, di mana sekarang semuanya sudah serba digital, bisa menyelenggarakan pelatihan secara online, sasarannya adalah UKM-UKM, fokus kepada industri batik, gitu ya, untuk menjaga kualitas batik kita seperti apa, atau brainstorming inovasi-inovasi produk apa lagi yang bisa kita buat untuk memperkaya ragam batik di Indonesia. Terkait promosi, akses pemasaran, ini juga butuh dukungan dari pemerintah atau dari pihak swasta, misalnya dibantu untuk bisa masuk di marketplace gitu ya, untuk bisa lebih hidup, di mana bisa jadi pelaku-pelaku UMKM belum terlalu melek teknologi nih, walaupun sudah tersedia marketplace, e-commerce sudah banyak, tinggal kita manfaatkan saja, tapi kalau belum ada pelatihan, belum ada pendampingan atau motivasi-motivasi seperti itu, mungkin para pelaku usaha juga masih menjalankan usahanya secara konvensional saja. Atau bisa juga membuat kampanye, misalnya dibuat hashtag Bangga Buatan Indonesia, Bangga Batik Indonesia, seperti itu, agar semakin hari industri batik semakin maju, sehingga bisa membantu perkembangan atau pertumbuhan ekonomi di Indonesia. Banyak peluang inovasi yang bisa dimanfaatkan oleh anak muda khususnya dalam hal industri batik, bisa membuat produk-produk batik yang kekinian, yang trennya sesuai dengan gayanya milenial misalnya, dalam hal ini juga untuk memperluas target market. Kalau sebelumnya mungkin batik identik dengan sesuatu yang formal, sesuatu yang resmi, tapi dengan adanya usia-usia produktif saat ini yang memiliki pemikiran-pemikiran kreatif dan inovatif, bukan tidak mungkin produk-produk batik bisa lebih beragam kemunculannya dalam berbagai bentuk gitu ya, sebagai wujud dari pemikiran kreatif anak muda Indonesia, sehingga target market dan segmentasi konsumen industri batik bisa lebih luas lagi. Kalau konsumennya lebih luas, penjualannya baik, bisa menjual sampai ke mancanegara misalnya, angka ekspor untuk industri batik bisa meningkat perlahan. Seperti itu Bapak Ibu dari saya, singkat saja sebagai materi hari ini.
Thank you.
Saya kembalikan kepada Mbak Nabila. Terima kasih banyak. Selamat sore.
Very interesting. Bagi naikkan ekspor batik. Sudah menurun sekarang batiknya karena tak dipakai tiap hari. Oke.
Thank you very much, Ms.